Hi everyone, I'm Carolina Pardo and today with my partners José Ovalle, Eivar Cartagena and Gina Alfaro are going to talk about the globalization nowadays. But first, let's start with the definition of what is globalization. The globalization refers to the historical process that entails a war interconnection in the cultural, economic, political, technological, and social spheres, thus generating an expansion of the capitalist system. At this end, a dissolution between world borders. What does that mean? The globalization was to interconnect the world. In this case, for example, you want to know what is happening in India, for example, you want to know what is happening in the United States, you want to know the culture of them, you want to like create economic relationships with them in order for you to increase your money. For example, countries can create like political agreements between them. That's the meaning of the globalization, to create a war that is without borders, that it can be interconnected in order to let the people know what is happening in the world, in the cultural, economic, political, technological, and also in the social system. So, and also it's really meaningful to note that the globalization wants to the expansion of the capitalism system. The capitalism system, I think that most people know that is like when the money is the important thing. So yeah, everyone is going to get what they worth, and that's it. So in this case, let's go ahead with the other topic. How new is globalization? Well, contrary to the popular belief, this is not a new phenomenon in history because we know, like in the 19th centuries, there were like migratory things happening all around the world for different kind of things, such as economical, social, or cultural things that really creates that migratory thing in the world. There was also the colonization of different countries. For example, one part of the African for the African countries were colonized for different countries in the Europe from the Europe, and for example, Colombia that was colonized by Spain in this case. That was a kind of globalization because because this country that is Spain is taking this culture, here's economical their economical beliefs and so on to a different country. And when they are in our country in Colombia, we are giving them our culture too. So this globalization like intercommunicate to different or more cultures, so on. So this is not new to the war in this case, but we set up the globalization and the name on when after the Second World War, because there was an appearance for the information communication technologies that is like the one that intercepts the global expansion of the markers for goods and all above for the capital machine. Let's go ahead with a different question. What has led to increased globalization? Well, globalization has increased thanks to the need for develop the third world countries, in this case, Latin America, Africa, and so on, because it's not a secret that we are in disadvantage with with the first world countries. For example, the United States, Africa, United Kingdom, and so on. So for that reason, we are more open to receive that globalization because we are disinformed. We don't have a lot of things in order for us to eradicate poverty, for example. So we take like what they are doing the first wars, and we are taking that in order to create a better country and so on. But in this case, it's really good to globalize for one reason, the economic reason. Because if we live in the globalized world, we can see the growth of world trade and primary products from poor countries. Because, for example, Colombia, we import a lot of things from the United States, and they give us a lot of things too. So it's like I give you one thing and you can give me another. So it's really good to have this. And for example, right now the culture in that right now is happening with the United States. Right now, the United States is really popular for their culture, so everyone is taking that culture to the Colombia, and we are creating like different cultures inside Colombia. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's really important to know what is happening in the world in the globalization itself in order to verify if we are making a good thing or not.
Well, point number 4. What are some positive effects of globalization? Globalization improves the social economic living conditions of a country, lifting it out of its poverty. Thanks to the accumulation to investments, labor and technological advances that this place obtains. This will directly benefit giving macroeconomic stability to create conditions conducive to investments and savings, efficient policies of opening to the outside through the expansion of trade investments, structural reforms that simulate competition, solid institutions, and effective administration that promotes good governance, education, training, and research and development to stimulate productivity, health, and the creation of effective social safety nets. And for the last one, management of the external debt that guarantees the availability of sufficient resources for sustainable development. Point number 5. When people trade, how do both parties benefit? International trade seeks the expansion of wealth and increase of the GDP through commercial relations that are generated taking into account efficiency, the best use of resources, the reduction of production costs, the commercial variety of goods and services, the increase of regional jobs, and the economic improvement through the exchange of currencies.
Well, what are some negative effects of globalization? Well, we have to accept that globalization is a great opportunity in order to improve, to increase the development of a specific society and a specific country. Yep, that's a fact. But it also has several negative aspects and negative effects. For example, the evident inequality. That's a fact also. The labor increasingly cheaper and increasing wealth in multinationals. It generates less national identity and several aspects which are important in order to have a national identity and development of one specific country. For example, here in Colombia, we have a lot of multinationals, but what about the manufacturing of our people from the fields, for example? It's just one example. So that's are several negative effects of the globalization in this specific country. Well, what are some negative effects of globalization? Well, we have to accept that globalization is a great opportunity in order to improve, to increase the development of a specific society and a specific country. Yep, that's a fact. But it also has several negative aspects and negative effects. For example, the evident inequality. That's a fact also. The labor increasingly cheaper and increasing wealth in multinationals. It generates less national identity and several aspects which are important in order to have a national identity and development of one specific country. For example, here in Colombia, we have a lot of multinationals, but what about the manufacturing of our people from the fields, for example? It's just one example. So That are several negative effects of the globalization in this specific country. 7. What role do the MFI, the World Bank, and the WTO play in globalization? These multilateral institutions are important in order to guarantee the globalization as free and as smoothly as possible, as we expect. And that's the fact, and that's the point of these three institutions. For example, the IMF monitors the world economy and seeks to guarantee the stability of the international monetary system. The IMF, the International Monetary Fund, is important because it guarantees the smoothly important in order to create the world economy and to seek to guarantee the stability of those exchanges. That's the fact of the IMF. About the World Bank. The World Bank works with developing countries to reduce poverty and increase shared prosperity by providing financing. It borrow money and resources to different nations in order to develop its own economy. And about the WTO, the World Trade Organization, this is the only international organization that deals with global rules governing trade between countries. And the importance of the WTO is that it regulates the flow of the exchanges between nations, and that is the importance of these three institutions.
Well, now we go to the next question. What are some effects of multinationals? Well, in general, multinational companies have had positive effects in host countries, have created jobs, and in many cases contributed to the economic growth of those countries or regions where they are established. And for example, in the case of Venezuela, the authors concluded that the increased presence of multinationals from 10 to 11% of the workforce in a sector of the economy result in an increase in the 0.2% in wages. Now we go to the next question is, what are some problems outsourcing work is involved in? Well, the most common problems in outsourcing work are it is difficult to find the right team due to the technology required, the large amount of supply, and not knowing how to identify the best person for the job, and not defining well the project or what we want from the professional. Also the negative view of IT that certain companies still have, lack of trust, lack of immediate availability, etc. And the last question is, what is it the future of globalization? Well, for globalization to develop its full potential, all governments need to take more seriously the economic lessons that open markets must be accompanied by policies that moderate the disruption of their impact and are more inclusive of the population in general. And real problems need to be identified and solved, not avoided, something that occurs when tinkering with trade policies is proposed as a tool to address unacceptable social ills.